A protest against the recruitment of men into the Russian army took place in India. Trump and Putin could meet at G20 summit in South Africa. Here's the latest, so you will be in focus. Subscribe and stay tuned. U.S. President Donald Trump and Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin could potentially meet at the G20 summit of world leaders in South Africa this November. This was suggested by Finnish President Alexander Stubb. At the same time, he did not rule out the possibility of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy participating in the negotiations on the sidelines of the summit. More details will be shared by Kristina Dombrovska.
Finnish President Alexander Stubb proposed holding a new meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Putin at the G20 summit in the Republic of South Africa. He also hinted at the possibility of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy's participation. Although there are no signs of a quick ceasefire or truce in Russia's war against Ukraine, work behind the scenes will continue, stated the President of Finland, speaking at the opening of the National Defense Course.
If the situation develops as expected over the next 2 or 3 weeks, then the G20 summit in Johannesburg may become the place for the President Zelenskyy and Putin meeting.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has repeatedly expressed readiness for a trilateral meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump and Putin, but he emphasized that Kyiv will not accept conditions imposed by the Kremlin. In September, the White House chief stated that he does not plan to attend the G20 summit in Africa. Instead, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance should go. Putin's press secretary Peskov previously stated that the Kremlin head has no intention of traveling to Johannesburg personally. He did not specify who will represent Russia at the summit. Meanwhile, in an interview with CBS News, Donald Trump once again stressed that he still believes in the possibility of resolving Russia's war against Ukraine. When asked by a journalist if, in his opinion, the war could end within a couple of months, the U.S. president replied affirmatively. At the same time, the White House chief is convinced that Moscow seeks to restore contacts with Washington.
I think he wants to come in and he wants to trade with us, and he wants to make a lot of money for Russia, and I think that's great. I think he really wants to do business with the United States. Donald Trump, President of the United States.
NATO called Russia's attempts to gain an advantage on the battlefield in Ukraine a strategic defeat. The alliance will support Ukraine in achieving lasting peace, assured NATO Military Committee Chairman Giuseppe Cavo Dragone. He reminded that due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, 2 more states, Finland and Sweden, joined the alliance. NATO countries also agreed to increase their defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035.
From an operational point of view, he considered the Russia-Ukraine war was bogged down, and it was almost time to sit and talk because it's a waste of lives. They, Russians, will not get a friendly or puppet government like in Belarus. Putin will not succeed. Giuseppe Cavo Dragone, chair of the NATO Military Committee, in an interview with BBC.
Of all NATO's current needs, the top priority is air defense. Recent intrusions of Russian drones into Poland and Romania have prompted the alliance to modernize its air defense systems, told Giuseppe Cavo Dragone. Regarding the possibility of activating the drone wall on NATO's eastern borders, he said it would be done within a few months. Protecting Ukraine's skies from Russian drones and missiles is also on the alliance's agenda. On November 3rd, this issue was discussed in Kyiv by Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal with a NATO delegation led by the U.S. Permanent Representative to NATO, Matthew Whitaker. For him, it is the first visit to Ukraine.
The main topic of our meeting is Ukraine's needs for the coming winter. The General Staff of the Armed Forces and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense provided detailed reports to partners. We focused on air defense means in building layered defense, missiles for air defense, interceptor drones, radars. Denis Shmyhal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, on X.
U.S. Ambassador to NATO. Matthew Whitaker previously noted that by the end of 2025, the European Pearl Initiative for purchasing American weapons for Ukraine may raise another $2 billion in the coming months. Additionally, he assured that President Donald Trump will monitor compliance with the U.S. sanctions imposed on Russia. Reported by Kristina Dombrovska, UATV News.
Protest participants are calling for an immediate response from the authorities and the return of their family members, who were tricked into joining the Russian army. According to the protesters in India, the men left for Russia supposedly for studies or work, but were forcibly or deceitfully sent to the front lines. More details in the report by Yulia Haranska.
Relatives of Indian citizens recruited by Russia demand the return of their loved ones home, reports the Ukrainian Center for Strategic Communications. Protesters say that some of the illegally mobilized Indians into the Russian army have gone missing or died. At least 12 are known to have been killed, and 16 Indian citizens are listed as missing.
Families have received neither bodies nor any compensation. This is another proof of how Russia uses foreigners as cannon fodder, hiding the real scale of its losses. From the Center for Strategic Communication and Information Security of Ukraine on Telegram.
For the first time since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in October 2025, an Indian citizen was captured by Ukraine's defense forces. 22-year-old Majodi Sahil Muhammad Hossein voluntarily surrendered to servicemen of the 63rd Separate Mechanized Brigade, Steel Lions. The foreigner says he came to Russia to study at a medical university, but was arrested and sentenced to 7 years in prison. The alleged reason was possession of prohibited substances. Later, as is traditional for the Russian Federation, the man was offered to go to the front instead of prison.
They said, serve 1 year and you'll be released home. Someone said they'd give 100,000 rubles. Someone said 500,000. Someone 1.5 million. They gave me nothing. Shortly, they're all liars there. Then I was at the training ground, and I was there for 16 days. Automatic rifle. Hold it, shoot. That's all. How to throw a grenade. That's it.
The Indian spent only 16 days in training. After that, he was assigned to assault troops. Having advanced just 3 kilometers and dug a dugout, Majodi said he could no longer go further.
I told the commander I don't want to. I'm very tired. My heart hurts. There was a conflict. He said, take the radio and we'll let him go. Screw him. I heard it myself. He took the radio, and I ran away for 2 to 3 kilometers until I reached a Ukrainian dugout.
Majodi reached the dugout of the medical company of the 63rd Separate Mechanized Brigade, Steel Lions. He says he does not want to return to Russia. He is not the first to be captured by the Ukrainian armed forces and asked not to be sent back to the Russian Federation. On October 30th, during combat operations near Volchansk, soldiers of the 120th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade captured 25-year-old Iraqi citizen Alimari Kamal Nabil Khalaf.
شهر السابع يوم 9.
I came to Russia on a tourist visa to work in a restaurant. Then the police detained me because I didn't have a work visa. They took me to the station and forced me to sign a contract. I was scared and didn't want to do it. But then they threatened that if I didn't, they'd put me in prison for 20 years.
The Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War reports that more than 100 citizens from 32 countries worldwide are in Ukrainian captivity, excluding Russians. The majority of prisoners are citizens of Central Asian countries. Foreigners end up in the Russian army through a similar scenario. They come to Russia to study, travel, or look for work. Later, they face legal problems and, to avoid prison, agree to go to the front. They are promised good salaries, limited service time, and rear positions. In reality, they become mere cannon fodder. According to Ukrainian intelligence, Moscow is actively recruiting citizens of Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq into the Russian army.
We record active work by Russian special services in Afghanistan. Former Afghan servicemen, special unit fighters, and intelligence officers are being recruited for the war against Ukraine. Recruitment is facilitated by the U.S. decision announced in March 2025 to end the temporary protection program for Afghan citizens and the start of deportations of Afghan refugees from Iran. Oleg Alexandrov, employee of the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine, in an interview with Ukrinform.
According to intelligence, about 1,500 Iraqi citizens are fighting in the Russian army. In African and Middle Eastern countries, particularly Yemen, Ethiopia, and Sudan, Russian diplomatic missions are involved in recruiting mercenaries, providing consular support for mercenaries' entry into Russia. Putin has no other choice but to recruit foreigners. Only in this way can the Russian dictator reduce tension in Russian society and replenish huge losses on the front, experts summarize. Reported by Yulia Hranovska, UATV News.
What's your take on all this? Share your thoughts below. This is UATV. Stay sharp, in focus, and stay safe.